Welcome to Awakening Perspectives with Laura and Lisle Claire.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on Awakening Perspectives, where we discuss everything awakening with Laura and Lisle. Today on our broadcast, we will discuss accepting responsibility while on our path to awakening.
Well, thank you, Laura. Accepting responsibility for our spiritual path is something that at times can be hard, and it is part of our awakening process. You have a perfect example for when you're sharing with me your story of having to take responsibility for your own education.
Yes.
So you took a responsibility at a very young age, even before you were legal age, to pick and choose what school you go to. And
That's correct.
so, if you want to share that experience a little bit as far as an example of taking responsibility, then we can go from there.
Sure. Well, thank you. A lot of people, including myself, wanted a way out of. I grew up in a very we call it not so safe neighborhood, and going to the high school was just, the first year was just terrible. I felt I wasn't really getting the education I needed because there was just so much disruption within the school and a lot of gang members and stuff, and I didn't want to be around that negative energy. And I wanted to go to a different school, and I know that my mom didn't drive and my dad worked pretty much during the day, and I had a pretty tough household, and my other brothers and sisters went to that school, but by the time I was going, it was pretty rough, and I found a different way of going, and it was going to be not the best way to do it now. I would not suggest anyone to do this, but that was my only way, was to use somebody else's address, and it was somebody at my church at the time, and he was the security guard at the school, so he offered his address, and I literally walked over to the school district office and picked up the forms and the paperwork and whatnot, filled it out, and then I had my mom sign it. Then I, took care of everything else, and finally I was accepted into the school, and I just took a bus. I took a paid bus, city bus, to go to school every morning so that I can go to a nice school and get a great education, and the school was diverse, and it was great, and it gave me a new opportunity. And I was amongst diverse students, and it just felt great being able to go to a school where I can be myself. And
how old were you when you decided to take this on?
I was 13.
So you're pretty young.
Yeah, I was pretty young. I was 13, going on 14. So,
and then also too, I know that you've shared with me too that on a similar note, that you've done the similar things when it came to your spiritual path by attending churches and stuff on your own without any of your family members.
Yeah, and being that I was raised in a family of 5, it was weird. Although there was 5 kids, we weren't close in the sense of, well, here, let me help you out and support you. It was like, no, you're on your own. I did my own, you do your own. It was that kind of a thing. So when I was growing up, I just felt that there was something bigger and better out there for me, or something for me to do, and I felt different. So I started experimenting, going to different churches, several different churches. I've gone to Buddhist, Mormon. I ended up sticking around with the Baptist church, and I got baptized for a while, and did a lot of activities with them. It was really fun. Then I moved on to other churches, but I still felt that I wasn't really getting what it was that I needed to learn. As I got older, I realized, I was just going to church, and I really didn't follow through what's the whole meaning of why I went. So it wasn't until I think I went to a psychic fair or something, and I ran into a woman who said that she had a church, like a get-together type of thing, like a church, and where they actually, they prayed, and they, meditated, and they spoke of God, but they supported and kind of accepted your psychic gifts, and they believed in like healing and how people can heal themselves and how we can use our gifts to help others. And I felt, oh my gosh, these people resonate with me because they're not telling me I need to, that I'll be going to hell or something like that, or I have an evil thing going on. They were very accepting, and they kind of opened me up to a lot of things that I didn't realize I had. Like, we have our own power. That all the stuff I was searching for was always inside of me. It was already inside of me, and I didn't know it. I was so lost going to church because I was conflicted between having psychic abilities, and then with the church telling me that it was evil, and then so I was just so conflicted. But then
well, the one thing I like about how when you're saying that though was when you were confronted with things that weren't currently working for you, or things you were being told by certain churches that didn't resonate with you, you accepted the responsibility to seek the answers that were congruent with your soul. And the fact that is something that we need to do today, in today's, instead of being told this is how we need to act because this is what's acceptable, or you're stupid, and so you choose not to be who you can be because you're afraid of somebody else's ridicule. That accepting that responsibility for your soul growth and your spiritual path is something that's very important today.
Yeah, I think so many people, and including myself, we put up limiting beliefs, and that is where you say, well, I can't do that, or I can't do this. If I said I can't, then I wouldn't have achieved a lot of things I achieved, because we had a lot of walls built up. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and there wasn't a lot of means for us to do things that we wanted to do. So I would find a way, and that a lot of people kind of get confused, and they think that, well, I asked God and it didn't come to me. And well, God expects everyone to kind of put a little bit of work into it as well. Mm-hmm. And then he will help you. And I think if you can at least try to make steps, he will make the rest happen. And I believe that everybody has the power to do what they want to do and find a way. There's always a way. And if not, and you come across a lot of stumbling blocks or obstacles, it would only mean that that's not your path. Mm-hmm. There's a reason for it, or that not at this time, it's not your path. But
I learned that with my first marriage. He was not a believer, and I went to church, and I went to Bible studies, and I was always very spiritual. And I had hoped that one day he would find his spirituality, but he was an atheist, and there's times when he kind of entertained it, but never bought into it. And I always felt like I was slighted, and I always had to fight for my own self to build my spirituality. But then I also gave in to a victim mentality that he was limiting me, that I wasn't able to experience certain things because of that. And I ended up having to, when things got to the point where we were divided, I then knew I had to take responsibility for my expectations in that relationship, and what I had thought I wanted versus my true soul journey, and then relearn who I was again, because I felt like I'd given myself so much away, and that's not his fault. That's what I did because I wanted the marriage to work instead of sticking to who I was. But later on, it isn't until later on we find out and realize these things. But retrospective.
I'm glad that you were able to find that, and that's what you were saying, is like you knew for yourself that your soul's like, it doesn't resonate with me. Something needs to change, and you stepped up and you said, okay, I'm going to have to make changes even though it hurts. And that's one thing. A lot of people, they know what needs to be done, but they're afraid to do it, to take that leap. And I'm telling all of you out there, go ahead and try to take that leap, because it's not going to hurt anybody. And what are the consequences? Nothing. I mean, except for maybe something good. Don't stay in a relationship if you're not happy, if things aren't resonating with both of you. Don't stay in an unhappy place. Stay in a happy place rather than an unhappy place. And don't expect other people to make your life happy, because if you do that, you're never going to really be happy, because only you can make yourself happy. And so you're the one that has to make the changes. You can't expect it from another spouse or this or that. If I only had this, I'd be happy. If I only had that. No, that's not true, because you're always chasing that happiness.
Well, exactly. It was almost like I was expecting him to deliver that to me in a certain fashion, instead of looking within myself as to what my expectations were, and taking that responsibility for my own path and being true to myself is something that opened up a whole lot more in me that I never would have experienced had I not done so. To be honest with myself. Responsibility also means honesty and authentic. To be authentic, yes.
Yeah, I think, yeah, be honest with yourself. And by being honest, you are being responsible, because you're like, okay, well, you know what? I'm being honest here. This is what I want. We can't be someone we're not, and be happy, because I know I was in a relationship, and I, I did everything I could because I didn't want this person to break up with me. So, I lost all this weight, and through that, I ended up becoming anorexic, which isn't good. And, I never questioned him a certain way because I didn't want him to, break up with me. And that's not right. And you have to be your authentic self. You have to be. And I ended up having an anxiety attack and panic attacks because of this. And after we broke up, I didn't have that problem anymore. Yep.
Yeah.
So I admire you for doing that, because it does take a lot.
Well, I think you, for what you shared with me too about the different relationships that you've had, that you found that you weren't being treated the way you wanted or deserved to be treated, and then coming to that realization has also taught you to accept that responsibility for your own path, to find what you do want, what you do deserve.
That's true. And I didn't realize it because of I was in a few very long abusive relationships, and I didn't realize that that's not good. I mean, it was like weird. I think it was because I went to one therapy session, and I was told that it was because that's what I grew up with, and that's all I knew, because that's how my dad was. And I guess subconsciously, that's what I felt that I needed to have, rather than a good person or whatnot. And once I realized that was holding me back, I said, okay, I'm determined to put something out there, make sure that I have a positive relationship next time. However, in saying that, with my siblings, when they have something that's disappointing happening in their life, or, they didn't get what they wanted, and they go ahead and say, well, that's just how we were raised, or that's, I can't help it because, I used to get upset saying, well, I wish I could have done this, because if I had this, like you had this, my friends, then I would be in the same position. And it was just like not taking responsibility at that time. But now stepping up and going, well, you know what? It's not my parents' fault, the reason why this is happening. It's me. I've chosen these things, and I've got to learn to realize that my choices are going to make my life, that you create your own life. It's not your parents. I mean, you could have, granted that they are your teachers, and that they're the only, they're your only, what do they say? Eyes. You see them as you're growing up, as this is how the world is, and so they're your teachers. And the thing is that we have to break that if we know it's something negative, and start something new. We can't focus on staying on that negative pattern. For instance, let's say, well, my parents never had money, so they never took their dogs and cats to the vet. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you have to do that unless you're struggling. But
yeah, I had a friend who she said that she felt very limited because her dad didn't give her the attention and wasn't able to help her out the way she thought she should be helped out. And I resonated with what she said at the time to a certain degree. But I realized then too later on that, at some point we've got to take responsibility for our lives, because that's what becoming an adult is about. If we are a child and we're needing the help and needing all this stuff from our parents, when we're children, that's viable. Once we become an adult, or to a certain point where even a preteen, where you are starting to gain responsibility for your decisions, you're starting to make the decisions of what you want, who you're going to be, then you also have to take responsibility. You have to take responsibility of it and say, okay, Mom, you've done what you can here. Dad, you've done what you can here. I wish I would have had more of this. I wish I would have had more of this. But then use that information to then build what you want in your adult life, whether it be financially, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, on all aspects. And at some point, we have to take responsibility and accept that responsibility in order to move on and make our world better, as well as maintain our spiritual connectivity to source energy, to the creation, to the creator.
That's true. I mean, our parents, we got to understand that our parents did the best they could with what they knew on how to be a parent. I know with my parents, they didn't have the type of lovey-dovey relationship with their parents, and so therefore they didn't know how to be that with us.
That reminds me of a program that I was watching about talking about radical forgiveness. That when you have gone through something like that, that radical forgiveness is the coming to realization that that person who had, you feel that either neglected you or had created an offense against you, was dealing with what was going on to the best of their ability with the tools that they had at the time. And when you can start seeing it in that way, and even if you're talking about, maybe some internal conflicts that you're having for yourself and blaming yourself for certain things. Oh, I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have that, and you're bashing yourself. If you can adopt the token of radical forgiveness and put yourself in that place that at that time you dealt with things on the basis of the best you could with the tools that you had at that time. And then once you give that radical forgiveness, then it's easier to then have almost like a clean slate, to where then you can build something different and not live within that same structure.
Yeah, and if we can understand that the parents are our model of the world when we're little, and we all look, I look at this kitten I have, and the kitten comes up to me, and the kitten's like, Mom, come here, help me, all this stuff, and it just needs that security. Mom is the security thing. We got to learn that as we grow up, things are different, and maybe we can look at our world and say, okay, well, you know what, why are my mom and dad acting that way? Well, maybe because their parents acted that way, and that was their role models. So there are role models, but if we don't like a certain behavior, we can change it in the way that we raise our children. And whereas some people will say, well, I'm going to be just like my mom and just like my dad, or I'm not going to be like them, but then when they raise their children, they are just like them.
Right.
And then,
well, that's where, healing with our fractured self. Because a lot of times when we come through certain things as children, when we're told, no, you can't do that or whatever, and so, oh, well, that I'm bad if I do that, then what you do is you take that part of yourself and you fracture it and you put them in a closet somewhere. Right?
Yeah.
Or whatever happens, whether it's something that, oh, you better be careful of what you say, or the devil's you're gonna go to hell, or something like that. So then you're afraid of that, and then you put that person who might have done something morally unjust in the closet, and then it's hard for you to realize that you could have done that. What we can do, though, is we can take responsibility for that by going back as the adult, now realizing, giving the forgiveness, and then giving, in a either in a hypnosis, NLP, or even in a meditative state, go into and then find that child in which that was fractured off, and then give that child what it needs. There are techniques out there that we can do to help us bring those parts of us back. And in many ways, they're called, there's another way they explain it is soul retrieval, because it's the parts of our cells, that our soul, that we break off and like we leave here, or we leave down on this timeline, or we leave down that timeline. And so by the time we become adults and we're starting to realize these patterns in our life, or we start getting signals from spirit that are saying, look at me here, I'm here, I'm trying to help you, and then but you don't know what to do. When you can accept those responsibilities to do that work, it's very important, so that you can help other people do the same thing.
I agree with you, and I think that if it's difficult for you to speak to your parents about it, or they don't want to talk about it, yes, it's good to go through a timeline therapy, or do a meditation where you're detaching yourself from it, by telling your subconscious mind that, I'm an adult now, I don't need to carry this with me anymore, and you can learn to like breathe it out and detach from that negative feeling that you have, and you can learn to, I know some people say, I can never forgive them. It doesn't, you don't have to, you can, and if you can realize that their behavior, or if their behavior, I should say, is brought up because of what's happened to them in the past, then that's all they knew. They really didn't know how to change their behavior. They didn't have any other models around, because things back in the day, it's kind of hard to explain, but depending on the generation, there's a lot of things that were accepted and they were just shut up about, and no one was ever to speak up. Kids could not speak up, and we're just, if you feel that you want to talk about it as an adult with your parent, then go ahead. If not, you have to let it go. Otherwise, it will be with you for the rest of your life. And a lot of people that don't deal with it end up turning to drugs, alcohol, or committing suicide, or they just can't keep a steady relationship because they've never let that issue go. They're still hanging on to it like luggage. And people, you gotta let it go. You can't hang on to these negative feelings, because it's like luggage. It's like a chain and ball, and everywhere you go, you're carrying it with you. And then if you find yourself bringing up things like, well, you don't understand, I was like this, or you don't understand, I'm with your dad, or you don't understand that, you're constantly using that as an excuse. That means you have not let it go, and you need to let it go, and you're not taking responsibility, because things don't happen because of that.
And to be honest, that's only a very small part of who we are. Those things that we have a tendency to say, like, even in what's going on today, I'm this gender, or I'm this color, or I'm this denomination, or I'm whatever, I'm this orientation, whatever it is. Whenever you say an I am, if it's only one thing that you're putting your whole self being on it, you're limiting yourself. Now, I know you've talked about limiting beliefs and stuff like that, and I know you've worked with limiting beliefs with NLP. How has that helped you on your path?
Well, it's helped me because I've learned through limiting beliefs is like, you don't want to become your illness. You don't want to become what, I'm stupid, I'm this or that. You don't want to think that you are, because you're not. The thing people must understand is we have our subconscious mind, our conscious mind, and whatnot. And our subconscious mind will believe anything you tell it. And if you say you're stupid, then okay, well, I'm stupid. So, you're going to walk around thinking that way. Or let's say when I was pregnant, here's a good example. After I gave birth, I had gained so much weight and I was so heavy, and I looked in the mirror rather than saying, I'm never going to lose this weight. I said, I'm going to lose this weight, because I didn't want to say, well, doll baby that, and go around saying, I wanted to lose that weight. I did. Put my mind to it. I did. The other thing is, when people say that you are, how do you say, you are your disease, or you are cancer, you are this, you aren't, you are not walking around, by saying that, it actually makes the cancer grow. If you say, you know what, I'm going to fight this sucker, and I don't have it in me. I can see already I'm better. What was it? My NLP teacher told me that a lot of actors will do this. They'll look in the mirror if they have to play a part of like an AIDS, person, in their the movie or whatever role they have. They'll look in a mirror and say, I have AIDS, I have AIDS, and then they'll keep saying that, and then pretty soon they'll look kind of distraught, and they'll kind of be able to play that part. But when they're done playing that role, and they need to kind of get back to normal, so they'll look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm well, I'm better, blah, blah, blah. And then their body will feel a lot better and feel a lot, awake. And I've even had that. I'm sure some of you out there have had it too, where you called in sick and you actually got sick, or you're at work and you're like, oh, I don't feel good, and all of a sudden you didn't feel good.
Right.
Well, that's your subconscious mind going, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and make you sick then if you're sick,
Right.
So we got to understand what we think we become. But we are not something of, if we can realize that we are a spirit in a human body, that, believe it or not, spirit is not male, female, or any of that stuff. Spirit is energy. It's the essence of the divine, of God. And when we go to heaven, we're not either or. There's no label on us. And while we're here on earth, though, in human form, we choose these labels, and these labels we get very defensive about. And that's where we have a little bit of a problem.
And to take on those labels definitely limits us. I remember, we were talking earlier about me going through the divorce, and instead of saying I'm divorced or I'm not worthy of this, because I saw, obviously those things go through your head, because you feel like you're not worthy of being loved for who you are. So what I chose to do, take action, start thinking, okay, what is it that I do want in my life? Because I don't want to feel like I'm not worthy. I don't want to feel like I can't, nobody is going to respect me or want to connect with me and have a full-on relationship with me, including spiritual stuff, finding a mate who's going to be able to sync with me on those types of things. So what I did is I did a like affirmation, took one of those cork boards or I wrote it on a board, and then I taped it to the ceiling. So that way, when I was laying in my bed, I could read it, and I put on there, I am loved. I am worthy of being loved. And then later on, it was kind of neat because I started getting into Abraham Hicks, and they talk a lot about manifesting the law of attraction and spiritual matters. So I started listening to her, and she also has what's a focus wheel, and when you put things into your vortex, because that's our life here on Earth is only limited by the experience that we want to have. And you were talking about it even just a little bit ago too, about the experiences that we have here on Earth, that if we feel that this is the only experience that we have, then we are even limited in that idea because of the fact that we are so much bigger. We are a part of the divine creator. We have that spark within us, in this body, in our soul. That is our soul, is that spark of the divine creator. And to know that we have access to the power of that. We don't actually die. Our body will slough off and die, but our soul lives on. And and growing that relationship with my soul part has become so much more now after being divorced and going through all that finding, that if I would have stayed with him and compromised myself to that degree, I would have
Yeah.
never found that. And
See, you've opened up and you kind of were set out, you were let out like a butterfly, and you're like, okay, well now I see there's so much more out there. And a lot of us do limit ourselves like, oh, well, geez, is there life out there besides this, and oh, I don't know about this. And there's so much more. I mean, I call myself now Dora the Explorer, because even going on nature trails, I'm always trying to find new ones. I love seeing new places and exploring new hidden gems and trails and things. And that's how it is with life. If you can imagine it, you can do it, and it does take your mind, a law of attraction. The board is a law of attraction board. So you cut out anything that you wish to be or have, and you have to know and truly feel in your heart that you're going to get it. I remember people saying, oh, you have to, blah, 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 but it wasn't that easy, even though I felt like, oh yeah, I'm going to get this, and didn't get it. But if you can picture yourself getting it and feel like you're going to get it, you're going to get it. I had that experience when I was going to the casino, and my husband's like, why do you go? I go, you know what? Because I'm going to get that money. I can see myself with a big check, like one that people hold up, like a public clearinghouse check. And you're like, yeah, right. And then a year later, I won $10,000, and I was holding, so you can make things happen, and you have to believe it. You just have to be patient and trust that it will happen, and it will. I think I've done that with a lot of things in my life. As soon as I put my mind to it, I was able to do it. There may be some times that I had to struggle. I mean, I would get upset because a lot of things that I struggled to get through. It's like, why don't I have this? How come nobody can help me? And I'd always feel that way, but then I'm like, okay, well, let me just do it myself anyway. And I'll do it, and then it'll turn out fine. I think and everybody's journey is different. My journey was to figure things out on your own and sink or swim. Here you go, go in the water, you figure it out. But that's how I learned, is being able to get out of that water and being able to tread water and figure it out. Like new jobs and things, they'll have me do something and nobody will know how to do it, but I had to come up with a way to do it. I'm like, oh, okay, let me figure this out. But once I figured it out, it was easy. So I'd create a manual for the next person so they didn't have to struggle. And but that's part of what life is in general. You go through things, you struggle, and instead of blaming other people, saying, you know what? This is a lesson I need to learn. If we can stand back instead of saying, why does this always happen to me?
Well, that's how. This is funny how you bring that up. When you're talking about when you're first really blossoming into your awakening path, that you are struggling because it's like you don't understand and things don't make sense anymore because the old structures you had aren't working anymore. How do I build this? You have a lot of questions. And you can see the signs that spirit are giving you, whether it's through somebody who's saying something, whether it's by seeing certain numbers. The thing that I found that was important was to seek that knowledge. Once you see that there's something that's going on in your life that you are either seeing as hindering you from being from what you want or intriguing you, either way, it is important to seek. Start seeking the information that you're looking for so that you can do your inner growth.
It really does make a difference. And I think meditating on it, you may not have a nature place to go or someplace that has nature, but put on headphones and listen to nature sounds and sit in your room, close your eyes, and, imagine that beautiful divine light coming through your body and your roots coming down from your tailbone or your feet and going into Mother Earth, and imagine yourself having what it is that you want, or that you will have peace, or that you will have this, and just know that you will, and just keep saying, I am loved, I am a divine being here in a human body, and I should appreciate it, because not everybody gets the opportunity to be in. I was telling my husband, talking about stuff, and I said, why do you think aliens want to duplicate us or replicate or procreate using our bodies? Why do you think that evil spirits or whatever want to enter into our body? Because they miss having a body, because not everybody gets opportunity to feel, touch, smell, and taste. This is something this is just what do you call it, like a shell but it gives us those opportunities to appreciate all these things. But while we're in the essence form or energy or soul form, we don't get to, experience this material 3D world in such a way as we would, because you have to be in a body to experience Earth
Right.
itself. And if we learn to appreciate that body that we have and appreciate every day that we have here, because it's only a limited time, we can make changes and make it something that we can always remember, and make changes to help others, and carve a path for them. Because when we help others, we help ourselves, and we can only be the example for the next people, for our children, for our friends. We can only be the example. We can't change anybody because nobody's broken. We just have to have them see by us. They can look at us and go, well, I really appreciate the way they did that. Maybe I'll start doing that.
I've noticed that too. When instead of judging them and saying, derogatory or negative things to somebody who might be, a little bit behind on the path than you are, I like to recognize them for where they are, because I can see that in a lot of ways that they are where I was once, and that you can just see that they're on their path. That's their path, and that is their responsibility to go on their path, and they will do so when they feel the timing is right, or when the information that comes to them. Because each of us, I know from what my realization has been is growing up as a Christian Catholic, in that typical dogma, that we do have spirit helpers, and they are here to help us on, guardian angels, spirit helpers, and even loved ones that help us that have passed. And when they show us those things that help to guide us, if we take the initiative to do the research and come to an understanding on how that fits into our new train of thought, and knowing and learning to realize the divine self we are, we can then do so much more. And then we don't have to judge those people who aren't quite there yet, because they will get there. They will get there, and we can love them regardless, because that's what our sole purpose, I believe, right now here in the 3D. You mentioned the 3D. That's exactly what we are in. We're actually, we're starting to get out of the 3D, but we've been having that 3D experience of polarization, of, you've got the opposites of everything, but then also within that opposites, we've got the medium, or the more balanced options as well. So if we can start realizing that certain experiences that we've had in the past that may not have been so good have taught us what we want, that are the opposite, so that we can learn to manifest those, then we can know that there was a purpose for going through that. I also have a question about what your beliefs are on something that's similar to that, though, because, we learn that while we're here. You talk about going to heaven, but what about the plan and what you soul contracts that we have made before even incarnating? Have we and I did not believe in reincarnation at some point. That's one of the things that I've had to kind of do some soul searching into, do some past life regression that you were talking about, in order to see if that's something that I could, if I did have a past life, or if that's something that would work for me, because I didn't believe in past lives before. But during a couple soul life regressions, I actually experienced some past lives, which now I do believe we have. And part of the whole that forgiveness, that radical forgiveness, is also about accepting our soul contracts for while we incarnate, having experiences, and that we do experience both polarizations, the good and the bad. Can
I interject something, since you said something when we reincarnate? Just something real quick, that those I've found and I've heard, those that have not learned to accept certain paths they have, or forgive certain things, they will come across that again when they come back, until they can learn to accept that. Because everything we go do or learn. Everything that we go through is a learning process. It's not I'm being punished. It's what can we learn from this process? What can I do differently? What is, and if you can accept that and take every obstacle or problem and look at it as a learning experience, then we grow. And if we're not growing, we end up coming back and having to go through that same school again because we haven't passed it, that subject. So if we learn to forgive in this lifetime, we won't have to worry about it in our next lifetime, you know. That's what I understand what karma is about. Right. And we need to learn to forgive. I think hanging on to things just does nothing. No, it does not help the spirit grow. And like they say, you know, we're created out of love, and we're all love, and we're taught fear. So we're taught a lot of these things, labels, this, that, and the other, and we let our ego, which is our conscious emotion, take over, and not realizing it's our human emotion, not realizing that we're really made out of love. That's our true self.
Well, the ego again is another part of that 3D experience, because you've got the ego versus our spiritual self.
Yeah, so, it's like we're put on the planet to see, okay, let's see how they're going to all handle the challenges that are ahead of them. Because it's a very tough planet to live on. And maybe, you know, people look at it, you know, they go through a lot of stuff, kind of unnecessary emotions and this, that, and the other of who we are. And it creates our soul, and it kind of gives us our soul a little more experience, fun experience, and things like that. And I mean, who else? I mean, I know there's other Earths, but you know, I appreciate this Earth. The more people awaken, people that are awakening, the people that are out there that are awakening, you realize that all of a sudden you're attracted to nature. You appreciate nature and all this wonderful stuff around you. That's when you know you're waking up, because you've taken the time to thank God for all the beautiful beauty, for the air, I mean, just everything. You know, even though I didn't live near any type of nature stuff previously, the stars were my nature. You know, I'd look up at night and go, thank you for the stars, for the clouds. I mean, just everything. And once we can appreciate things, oh my gosh, you don't even know, there's so much more that comes to you. Once you recognize that, you know, you just need to be appreciative and realize who you truly are, and that, you know, none of the stuff that's going on the earth plane or 3D plane or here on earth, it doesn't matter once you go to heaven. It really doesn't make a difference. What makes a difference is what you learn.
I remember going through a time in my life where I, you know, after obviously a divorce and having to get a job to support, you know, 2 girls, and then also help my sons out once in a while. Taking on that responsibility too was something that it was very weighing on me, and so it was hard to go through the day and not be exhausted. But I found that finding even the little things that I saw throughout the day and give it gratitude made a huge difference in changing things to where things were not as gloomy as they could have been. I remember driving down the road, my road, exiting my driveway, going down the road to go to work, and the days that I saw the doves on the electric lines just made me happy, because then I could see the doves, and just little things like that made a big difference. You know, a balloon, the balloons, you know, like the big hot air balloons, often went over our house. And so when they went over, when I could wake up in the morning and go to work and see the balloons, it made me happy. So I to focus on those little things really did help my spirit and lift my spirits up to be able to do what I needed to do. So you know what? And you're so right about that gratitude. It makes a big difference.
And also, with you saying that you focus on a certain thing to make you happy or whatever, you know, that brings up something I wanted to interject on. When I first learned to meditate, I didn't know how to meditate the right way, and so I'd be crying because of my past experience and stuff. But what I've learned, some people are like, I don't know how to meditate, but if you focus on something that makes you happy, like, or for me, it was like I focus on the smell of a rose, like just smelling the rose. And if I kept my focus on that while I'm doing like my breathing routine and trying to close my eyes and picture the light coming through me and all this, I'd picture that rose and smell that rose, and I'd focus on that. And that would actually helped me. So I was getting out of that negative mood, all this other stuff. And then when I was done meditating, I'd feel so much better. And it made me come back to my real spirit and realizing, oh, well, that other stuff is not important. We get so caught up in that rush, and this is so important. And we think it's so important, but our what do you call it? Our conscious mind tricks us into saying, yes, it's important. You've got to struggle. You got to have fear. But no, you don't. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't get us anywhere. If you're getting pissed off because you're stuck in traffic, why are you getting pissed off? Because now you're going to get home and you're going to yell at everybody. So why don't you just be relaxed, call somebody and say, hey, how's it going? And hang out with them on the phone for a while. You get home, you'll be in a great mood. I'm glad I'm home, But the thing is it often takes so long for us to realize that when we're getting angry, it's just we're causing it ourselves. Nobody else is doing it. We're doing it ourselves, and we need to give ourselves some credit and realize,
you're giving that energy more energy by being in that vibration. I definitely learned that too, and so yeah, exactly. My son had passed away in 2015, and so a lot of these little techniques I had already started putting into practice. Not always seen full manifestations, but I knew that they worked, and I knew that they were affecting a significant change. I after losing him and then a lot of other family members, I knew, thank God, I knew, and I can say thank God, whether you want it, God, thank Spirit, thank the divine, whatever, that I had already started doing the work I did, emotionally, spiritually, in order to put these practices into place. And that after he passed, I could use those in order to help me on then what became a grief journey. Because a grief journey is very much has become part of my soul journey and my spiritual journey as well.
And that brings up again, like the example. You are my example of, that's what you went through is so, I couldn't imagine, how hard it is when you lose a loved one, especially a child. But to go through that and to reemerge the way you are now has been a great example to me, because with that, I see that, that we can have life after that, and that we can do other things to help ourselves as well as others. And that, I don't know, it's remarkable. And I just admire what you've gone through. And, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have been able to go through that without having, already had some of that path pre-paved. I feel like Spirit was preparing me to be able to have the tools I needed to be able to deal with that. And
you've learned that over time that's like something that you had to learn so that you can help others.
But I've also learned too that Jacob's death was not necessarily my path, but that was his path.
Yeah.
And so I've had to release that as, even though I've had to experience my side of it, the actual dying part was it was his path, and it was his exit.
And that brings up something I was telling my husband. I go, you know what? Every time there's something that happens, like, okay, so like, that's his path. Or like, for instance, okay, there's one thing that's his path, but yet in a way it was kind of your path to experience that, his death, and his path was just to come here for a short while. So everything kind of plays together, whether we know it or not. Every little bit, it's like, I don't know, there was a movie I was watching, and it's like a chain reaction, and we don't realize how this one little thing can affect so many other people. Or had this not happened, then this wouldn't have happened. But everything is planned just so precise that, that's how it's meant to do. Now, the thing is there's two options, whether you can go straight or you can go the negative route. And you can either go to drugs, alcohol, pity, feel sorry for me kind of mode, blah, blah, blah. But you chose not to. And that's what I admire about you. You chose, no, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to do what, what I
Well,
need to do.
a part of me did have to. I had to allow for grieving, though, and being sad, and
Oh,
taking the time
of course.
to experience those emotions as well. But I mean, what that experience really solidified some of the other spiritual experiences I'd had previously, which were premonitions of his death. You know, other premonitions that I'd had, dreams that had come true, and questioning whether these things were real or whether they were just a figment of my imagination. When he passed, I mean, I'd had several dreams that have come true growing up as a little kid, but then I was told that, you know, under the guise of dogma through the, you know, Christianity and Catholic setting, that, you know, that was probably the devil, you know, taking control of my body, or yeah, I've got to be careful of stuff like that. And so it was kind of hard until I started opening up to my spiritual self instead of my religious self, that those experiences were real, you know, that hearing a spirit's voice talk to me was real. You know, when my first son's dad had passed away, I heard his voice as I was driving to work one day. This is before Jacob passed, but then after Jacob passed, actually while he was in the hospital, I experienced him standing next to me saying he didn't, you know, I don't want to live like this anymore. I experienced seeing his light body shoot into the room and just go all over the place saying, look mom, look mom, what I can do now. And I heard him actually driving all the way to the hospital saying, I'm so sorry mom, I'm so sorry mom. And so I know now that these experiences were real, that I've had enough experiences, and these experiences were so raw and so authentic, there's no denying it anymore. And so to now take on the bravery of being authentic in those experiences, and that's accepting that as part of my path, and the responsibility that goes along with that.
I think also by you doing this, you kind of freed his soul in a sense that, can you hear me good or okay?
I can hear you,
okay,
yes.
I just want to make sure. By you doing this, you've actually, people don't realize that when they hang on to grief, and they don't let the other person go, they don't go. They cannot experience life on the other side. They're kind of stuck. They're not going to show themselves to you because you're grieving too hard. And people don't realize that until you let them go, they can't continue with their soul on the other side. So what you've done is you've learned to let him go, and you've also given him, I don't know, that freedom to experience more out there.
Well, before he passed, we would have conversations about him, you know, because like I said, I have dreams that come true, so we'd have conversations. He would tell me his dreams, and then I mean my girls will too, but he would tell me then that he was having out of body experiences where he could feel himself levitating over his body and then drop into his body. And so we had an open dialogue about these things, so that when I experienced this as he was making that transition, I mean, when he was standing next to me, I could still hear him, and he said he didn't want to be there. He was still attached to his body with a silver cord, but it wasn't until we said, okay, it's okay for you to go, that then he was able to fly around with his light body.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
you know, having these experiences and coming to terms and doing the work that you need to do to be able to get to this point, I know that I've already helped a lot of people. You know, I coach grievers in many forums, and help people get in touch with their intuition is something that has become evident that is on my path to help others do. And I know that's the same thing that, you know, similar things that have happened for you too, because things that you have realized and have seen and have experienced. And you've not had to go through the extremes for, you know, you haven't had to be beat in the head, like losing a child, in order to say, okay. But which is good. You know, I wouldn't want anyone to have to go through that. But taking up that torch to do that work is something that is important in all of us right now, because then we'll see what's really going on in the world today. We'll be able to see through the lies. We'll be able to see through, you've even mentioned this, you'll be able to know what's true. You'll be able to know what's true right off the bat. There won't be any question. You'll be able to see through all of it.
Do you think this is true? This just, because we have to bring that out, I think, so that people don't, how do you say it, don't negate their own feelings, but, why am I feeling this? Why do I feel this? We have to kind of look and say, well, the reason why you're feeling that is because that's what the soul's saying is true.
Right.
You can see beyond people's lies, basically. You can see when people are lying.
Right.
That's what I noticed. It's like all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, I don't want to be around these people, or this person's lying and I don't trust them. And it's just weird, but you just know when people aren't being honest with you, and you don't want to point it out, but eventually it'll come out, but that's how you can tell. But maybe I don't need to hang out with this person, and maybe,
right.
Because there's a lot of people hanging out with people that they know are not right for them, or just even as friends, and yet they hang out with them knowing that this person is going to lead them on the wrong path. And they're going to lie to them and say, no, this, and it's just to take ownership or charge, what do I want to say, embrace your spiritual self.
And with that, thank you for joining us. And remember, you are a spirit living a human experience. If you like this podcast, please click like and share.